Welcome back to Retro Tech or Die. We're doing a very similar video to what we did last year, where we took this original Game Boy, upgraded it with an IPS screen for my son for Christmas, and he absolutely loved it. We got a lot of good mileage out of this machine. Doing a similar upgrade, but with this Game Boy Color. Still going to put an IPS screen in it, and we're going to reshell it into this hot pink shell for my daughter. Stay tuned to see how we do it. An objective I had with this upgrade is I wanted something really no frills, really it just worked. One thing I found out with this original Game Boy that I did for my son is there's a lot of options in here. You can change different color palettes, you can go into the options, adjust the screen, do all kinds of crazy stuff. He doesn't use any of it, right? Not saying this was a waste, but there are cheaper options out there. And I kind of wanted to explore that with the Game Boy Color. So I went with FunnyPlaying. It's a GBC Retro Pixel IPS LCD kit. This is the Retro Pixel 1.0. Really, it's just the screen. When you get to the 2.0 and laminated shells on top of it, it gets pretty complicated. There's a lot of functions in there. We don't need all of that. And this is a really great kit. I mean, one, I love the case that it comes in, but it comes with everything you need and nothing more. We have the actual IPS screen itself, a sticker that goes on the back of the screen to reduce light intrusion, and the new lens that is bigger, because this does have a bigger viewing angle than the original screen. So let's put all this to the side, and let's open up our Game Boy Color. As always, make sure you take the game and any batteries out, and we're going to open this with, and remember, all these Game Boys have 6 tri-wing screws. So let's get our tri-wing bit and open this up. So the Game Boy pulls right apart. We're just going to save the back case because we are recasing this. I do want to save these parts in case we need to upgrade another machine. So we're going to change our bit from a tri-wing to a regular Phillips, and we're going to free the main board. Want to be careful when we remove this. We don't want to rip that ribbon cable. Although we are upgrading the screen again, I want to keep all these parts. The new case did come with some buttons, but I want to reuse the original because I find that these are typically, unless they're really beat up, typically better quality than any reproductions you're going to get, or most reproductions. You can go and buy some higher quality ones. So we'll flip this over, undo the ribbon locking mechanism here, and we'll free that ribbon cable. And then we'll just put this aside as parts, maybe for a future project. Before we get too further, I want to talk a little bit about this particular Game Boy and some of the things I did and will do to it. This was an eBay pickup, and one, Game Boy was spelled incorrectly, so that kind of helps my search a little bit. But if you want to find a cheap Game Boy, search for no sound or sound issues. These are really easy issues to fix. I picked this Game Boy Color up for less than $30, I think. And it was exactly as described. It would turn on, it would load the game, but there was no sound. All I had to do was get a little bit of deoxit in here, turn the volume up and down, and it worked. For good measure, I also put deoxit down in the volume jack. It works perfectly, right? There is a little bit of corrosion around the battery contacts, but I'll get those cleaned up, and I'll also clean into the cart connector here. But other than that, this looks like a really clean board. One thing I did do is I also went on FunnyPlaying and I ordered a replacement speaker. I've been getting into the habit of doing this. I mean, it's open. Why not? Let's just replace the speaker. So first thing we're going to do is replace the speaker, and then we'll start with the LCD mod. Speaker replacements are real easy. just as you would imagine, two little contacts down here. They're labeled SP. We just need to desolder and we'll put the new ones on. All right, so we're doing a little handheld action here. Now that we got the speaker installed, I do want to show the kit comes with 3 bits of wire. And what we need to do, the 2 long ones are going to connect to point P12 on select and P13 next to start. Those are going to go up to the screen. And the short one is going to go right here on the power switch, right on C. So we're going to solder those on. Now this is going to be one of those shots, because how small these points are, my head's going to be right in the way. So I'm just going to knock these out and just trust me, it's going to be a little small. Now they also, if you look on the website for FunnyPlaying, they do show some alternative options. Everything's really labeled. I like the way they explain this. So if P12 is a little difficult, maybe it's a little hard for you to solder something that small, they do show some points here, and I think it's these two diagonal ones on each pads. So you do have some options to go through as you solder this up. All right, I don't know if this is going to be usable, but we will see. So before you get your wire on here, the very first thing we want to do is tin these points. So we're going to start with P12 here. All right, so I got all of these connected. We have our power switch, we have our start and select. Before we go further, we need to prepare a couple things. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to put the new lens on. Now, I already went through here with the Dremel and I widened this a little wider than what I need to, right? We'd rather make sure we completely see everything rather than have a little bit of plastic showing. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can remove the non-sticky part, right? Because I want to put the lens down and make sure I did my measurements right. And I always recommend when you replace a lens, especially if you widen any of the back, tilt the screen left or right a little bit, not a whole lot, and make sure you don't see any of the plastic. So that looks pretty good. I think I'm ready to commit that. The next thing we need to do is prepare the back of this IPS screen. So if you notice in the beginning, I said they do give you this FunnyPlaying sticker. All it is, it's just a light blocker. And we're going to take very carefully this ribbon cable off here. And we're going to apply this sticker. And this makes sure that there is no stray light that will affect the back of the screen and bother your playing. Oh, that's not lined up right. Ugh. All right, so that's pretty good. Now, before we connect all of these wires up, we're actually going to test this. So we're going to put this in. Oh, no, first we got to plug our screen in. Then we're going to plug everything in together and do a power on test just to make sure everything works. We don't need all those wires connected because we're actually not going to be doing anything with the touch sensor or any of the options. So carefully maneuver this around and make sure we don't short anything. And the speaker can hang a little bit. And this is off. Put some batteries in. Throw Donkey Kong Country in. And let's take a look. Ooh. That looks really good. Now, one thing I want to notice with this kit is depending on the lens and the options in the software here, see this white box on the bottom? That can actually, if you got a different lens where the Game Boy Color was transparent, you can change the color of Game Boy Color. You know, you can, I think you can do the whole thing, Game Boy and color. You can change the background colors for it. I'm not that interested in that. I don't think my daughter's that interested in that. But, geez, that looks really good. Okay, we're not going to play. We're gonna get this finished up. So let's carefully take these batteries out. Get the game out. Come on, come on. And let's get everything soldered up the way it should be. So the ribbon cable you see is labeled pretty good. So we have the power there, and then select and start where we need to plug everything in. All right, so I already have all of our points on the ribbon cable tinned. Let's get our power cable connected. Now, one thing I am going to do, because I just get a little cautious, I am going to put a little bit of electrical tape over these points, because especially on the back end, they are pretty big solder points, and I want to make sure that we don't short anything out or even risk shorting anything out. There. Now, fortunately, this is in a transparent case, so you're not going to see it. Now, on this side, take 2 seconds and make sure you verify, because we have start and select. So start goes here. Select out of the way. Start and select. Hopefully my head isn't in the way. Jeez. So small. Okay. Start and select are connected. And what we're going to do 2 pieces of electrical tape. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of bring these wires in together a little bit. And we'll also cover those points up, because these points, it's a little close to the main board for me to be comfortable. So I want to make sure everything's covered up. want any issues, huh? That should be good. Now, I'm going to assemble some of this off camera and then we'll come back. One tip I do want to say, all of these IPS screens have this film protector on it, as they should. Take this off at the absolute last minute. And if you have a fine microfiber cloth or maybe something you clean your glasses with, just give that a nice clean and the back of the lens before you put everything together, because the last thing you want is a speck of dust on it that's going to bother you for weeks until you tear it apart again or say, yeah, I'm going to live with it. Well, that is light years ahead of the original screen. Even if I can get this where the light captures it without a glare, I mean, it's just no contest. This is way, way better. Now, I'm glad I didn't show myself assembling this because I ran into some issues. This case, I just bought this case off eBay because it was a color that I thought my daughter would like. I should have bought the cases that FunnyPlaying sells that match with the screen, because I had to trim a little more plastic, especially around the power LED. There's a little barrel around that the LED sits into. I had to trim almost half of that off for the screen to fit. Another thing I noticed, which really isn't a deal breaker for this application, is the touch sensor on the top that would dim the screen. You'd be able to tap it multiple times and the screen would cycle. That is intermittent. It's not working now, but sometimes it has worked with this case. I think that the plastic is too thick, or maybe it's just not sitting in the right area. But I did take the case apart and I touched it and it works. So everything is connected correctly. I think it's just this case that doesn't allow that ribbon to be touched perfectly. But like I said, I don't think my daughter's going to really care. She just wants to play. She's not going to be adjusting settings on it. And if we do this side by side with the DMG that I built for my son last year, you'd be hard pressed to tell a difference. I am very, very impressed with this. Like I said, this is the GBC Retro Pixel 1.0 kit that you can get on FunnyPlaying for $48. I think that's $48 well spent, even if you use your original case and mod it. It just looks really, really good. And it sounds good too. Especially we have that new FunnyPlaying speaker in there as well. So I think that's going to wrap this up. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I think my daughter is really going to enjoy this come Christmas Day. If you like what we're doing here at Retro Tech or Die, like, subscribe, tell your friends. We'll catch you next time.